What's up, football fans? There's only a few weeks left in the NFL season. Listen in on this week's Survivor video to try to get you over the line and into that Survivor Championship through week 14. Let's take a look at the games for this week's slate. The Cowboys here, I think it's the largest spread of any team this season, as they're favored by 17 points, minus 1,800 money line, and almost a 95% chance to win. Outside of that, you got a couple of big spreads with some typical names that we've seen all year, with the Chiefs and the Bills being 9-point favorites. Eagles and Bengals, Raiders about a little less on a touchdown favored. And then you got a few home teams that are favored just by slightly more than a field goal. And we'll talk about each one of these games. But first, again, always a reminder, I do it every video, check the schedule for these teams. There's always a rotating list of teams that you're considering in a given week. Always good to check, even as the season comes to a close and there's less and less options in the future, just to see what's happening in the upcoming weeks for these teams. So we'll start with the teams that I think you should be a little bit wary about and think extra long and hard before taking. And the first one of these games is the 49ers hosting the Buccaneers. And I had this as a perceived a caution game before the Bucs even made a comeback against the Saints late in the fourth quarter. Even if the Bucs lost that game to the Saints, I would still recommend thinking twice about this one. And the reason being is that the 49ers are with their third string quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the NFL draft, Brock Purdy at quarterback. Now, the Niners are as good a team as any to withstand subpar quarterback play, especially because on offense, they have so many great weapons, great coaching and great scheming with Kyle Shanahan in an offensive system that wants to run the ball. They don't want Brock Purdy throwing the ball all that often. They don't want Jimmy Garoppolo throwing the ball all that often. They would rather run the ball 50 times a game. That being said, they're going up against a Bucs defense that is the fifth best in the league in points per game, a very stout front seven, but a banged up secondary. So the advantage would be to pass on this Buccaneers defense right now, given their injuries. But I don't think the 49ers really want to do that all that often, especially not early on in this game. They can avoid it. I'm predicting a very low scoring game here in general, but the Buccaneers are scrapping and clawing for a playoff spot in a very tight divisional race. They definitely needed that win against the Saints, and just about every game for the rest of the season is going to be especially crucial for them. You would like to see the Buccaneers take this win against the Saints and kind of build off that and gain some momentum and go against the 49ers team that, again, is going to have some very subpar quarterback play. You would think any game with Tom Brady versus a rookie quarterback that was one pick away from being undrafted, you'd like those odds here. So something just to be aware of. This Buccaneers team really struggles putting up points, but I suspect the Niners are going to struggle putting up points as well with Brock Purdy at quarterback. Both these teams' defense are very good. This is going to be a game much like the Buccaneers Saints, where it's going to come down to a low scoring game, fourth quarter comeback potentially for Tom Brady. Something that I just would like to stay away from here in the 49ers, as their quarterback plays extremely uncertain right now. Moving on to the next game. I'm a little nervous about this Raiders-Rams game. I know the Raiders are coming off a big win at home against the Chargers, their divisional opponent, but on the road here against the Rams team that, gave the Seahawks a game in week 13, I don't think this -6 is really all that justified. The Rams have the best run defense in football. The Raiders have the best run offense in football. So that really gets neutralized there. The Raiders are going to have a tough time leading on their strength, and they're going to have to pass the ball probably a lot more than they like to this game. Rams have a top 5 defensive unit in football, and I think they're going to keep this game closer than a lot of people think. I get that a lot of people probably stopped watching the Rams once Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford went down, as their quality of play drastically declined. But if Wofford can limit turnovers, he threw 2 in the game against the Seahawks, and they still barely did not win that game. He can limit the turnovers here against the Raiders defense that isn't anything special. I think it could be a lot closer game than a lot of people imagine. I don't think this Raiders team is very good, and I really don't think this -6 is warranted based on the talent discrepancy between these two teams, because I don't think the talent discrepancy is all that much. So I'd be a little bit wary of the Raiders this week. It seems they're due for a letdown after a big emotional win at home against the divisional rivals, the Los Angeles Chargers. And then the final game I want to talk about, and you should think twice about, is the Bengals at home against the Browns. I know what you're thinking. How could this be a bad pick? The Bengals just beat the Chiefs, who I've been saying are the best team in the team to beat in the NFL. But the Browns have had the Bengals number throughout the last few seasons. The last 6 matchups have all gone to the Browns. They've won the last 6 times in a row. Most recently being that Thursday night matchup where the Browns beat the Bengals by 20 points. And the reason being is the Browns just really match up with the Bengals well. You know, you think about the Browns versus the Chiefs are very opposite. The Browns want to run the ball a ton, very good, front seven. The Chiefs want to throw the ball a ton, a really solid bend don't break defense in the secondary. And the Bengals are much more suited to beat the latter, the Chiefs, in their pass heavy attack than it is for them to go against the Browns in their run heavy attack with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So I do think the Bengals should win this game. They're certainly the better team. Deshaun Watson looks very rusty against Houston. But for the fact being that the Browns are going to look to run all day, every day against the Bengals, and that they've had success doing that the past few times, makes me concerned picking the Bengals this game. As you know, I always am a little bit more concerned picking a survivor team when they're playing a divisional opponent. It makes me even more concerned when they're playing a divisional opponent that they haven't beaten in the last 3 years. So something also to think about there. Just the Browns seem to have the matchup advantage. The Bengals, and they've shown the past 3 seasons it doesn't matter their quarterback play. They've had a revolving door of quarterbacks the last 3 seasons, and they've still been able to beat the Bengals every time because of how good their run game is, because of how solid their defensive front is. And their pass rush, especially against the Bengals offensive line, that has been historically a weak spot in Joe Burrow's career. All those signs point to stay away from the Bengals if possible. The best pick is clear. Like I said in the beginning of this video, Cowboys are the heaviest favorite in the game this season. They're at home playing very much so the worst team in football in the Texans. Cowboys have very solid position players at just about every key position group. This is a no-brainer. If you have them, this is the time to use them. It's just you'll never get an easier pick this year. I get the idea of trying to save the Cowboys for later in the season because they certainly have somewhat easy matchups later, but take the sure thing when you get it. You don't get a team favored by 17 points very often. Talking about a value pick here, I'm going to go back to an old classic of value pick, but also proceed with caution. That's the Raiders and the Rams. Again, I talked about this game, and you might recall, you recurring viewers, that the Raiders were a best value pick a few weeks back, and I think it was against the Texans. And I said, there's not really many games, if any games, the rest of the year that you're going to pick the Raiders. Well, things happen. The NFL changes, and starting quarterbacks go down. Aaron Donald goes down. The Rams are in shambles right now. Cooper Kupp goes down. So originally, you wouldn't think that the Raiders, facing the Super Bowl defending champions in their home territory, would be a spot you might consider picking. But because of those reasons, because of those key injuries, it now is. Again, I don't love this pick just because the Rams are steadily improving. And again, I think their strong defensive front bodes well against the Raiders. But you look at the Raiders' schedule, unless anything crazy changes in terms of injuries, I don't like them against New England, not at Pittsburgh. So I don't think the Raiders are that solid. Even with Brock Purdy at quarterback, the Niners, I still think are able to beat the Raiders here with their solid defense and offensive weaponry. And then you're not going to pick them against the Chiefs either. There are other teams you consider. Again, the Bengals are definitely up there in terms of consideration. I just don't like the divisional opponent aspect and the fact that, again, it's been 7 times. It's been 7 matchups since they've last beaten the Browns. You could maybe consider the Seahawks, and then even the Niners too, based on their remaining schedule. But those are teams that are favored by less than the Raiders. The Raiders are favored by 6 points here, not really picking them for the rest of the season. So it could definitely be a value spot if you haven't picked them yet. But again, I'm a little scared of that game. Good picks here. To no surprise, the Chiefs, even though for you longtime viewers know, I almost never would recommend picking a divisional matchup on the road. But right now, the Broncos just straight up cannot put up any points. I don't think there's very few ways I imagine the Broncos winning this game. It'd have to be a complete meltdown for Patrick Mahomes, which we really have never seen in his career. The Broncos have struggled at offense. I think they're going to get the ball to Mahomes, Reed, Kelsey, and this Chiefs offense one too many times. for the Broncos would hang with them. So really like that spot for the Chiefs there. And then another good one is favored by the same amount, same percent chance to win. The Buffalo Bills at home this time facing the Jets. You'll remember that earlier this season they traveled to New York and lost. Josh Allen with a couple key interceptions in that game against a Jets defense that has shown they are one of, if not the best in the league. But I think the home element, the fact that the Bills are now in control of their destiny in terms of winning the AFC East with that Miami loss in San Francisco. And then the Jets quarterback play has been way too shaky, way too turnover prone. No matter who's out there, Mike White, Zach Wilson, for me to believe the Jets win this game in Buffalo. So I think you had a pretty safe pick here with the Bills at home. Another good one too. Again, normally I would not be saying, home team or away team, divisional opponent's a good pick. These are certainly less good than the Chiefs and the Bills, but I really like the Eagles mismatch against the Giants and really just about all aspects of football. The Eagles are a top 10 in like literally every category, and the Giants are like bottom 10 in most. But stats don't tell every story, and I like to use those in the analytics to guide my picks. But the Giants are winning football games this year. At the very least, they're not losing. Mentioning that tie against the Commanders this last week. But I think the Eagles are just way too overpowered for this Giants team that is too one-dimensional on offense, in my opinion. Defense is a bend, don't break, but I think the Eagles' offense, especially with the dual threat capabilities of Jalen Hurts, would be too much. I like the Eagles here. I think 6.5 is a pretty fair spread for this game. Other picks that I don't hate, but certainly aren't as good as the other ones and not quite proceed with caution. Seahawks at home against the Panthers. The Panthers are going to be throwing out Sam Darnold, who's been really not good his entire career, so not a good spot for them. They are coming off a bye, which makes me a little bit more nervous, but Seattle, who has historically had, an incredible home field advantage. Geno Smith's been looking really well this year. I've been playing very well this year. Getting the ball to Metcalf and Lockett have been really helping that offense. Even though Kenneth Walker, he's day-to-day, I don't think it matters as much. Because, again, Geno Smith is I think, top 5 this year among quarterbacks in QBR. He's been playing very well. So I think that quarterback edge alone warrants you to pick the Seahawks. And then finally, the Titans, divisional opponent, but Jaguars have really struggled of lately. They weren't able to put up many points against the Detroit defense. That's a bottom 10 unit in the league. The Jags, again, they struggled. They're going to really struggle against the Titans, who are a top 10 defensive unit, top 5 in run defense. So they're going to make this offense even more one-dimensional than it is. And honestly, the Titans are a well-coached team, well-disciplined team. I say that in all my videos. And the thing about the Titans is they beat the teams they're supposed to beat. And that's why they win the division more often than not. That's why they're a playoff team in the past few years under Vrabel. So I think this Titans spot, while it isn't the greatest looking pick on paper, I think it's a good spot to be in as they're looking to, really solidify that division and, maybe set themselves up for some seeding in the playoffs. So just to review, I really like the Cowboys here. How could you not against this matchup against the Texans? I think the Raiders are really good value because, again, not a really good football team. Every other team on this list is a playoff team except for the Raiders. So a lot of value there to be potentially picking them for a survivor pick, but also I'm a little wary of picking them because the Rams have been building steam and they're on the road, and I don't think the Raiders are that good. Maybe watch out for the Niners here with their quarterback situation and the Bengals given their history against the Browns. But otherwise, I think you can't go wrong picking most of these picks here. And I think you're going to see a lot of the favorites at least win outright. Maybe not cover, but win outright in week 14. But I hope this video helps. Again, as always, let me know in the comments section. If you got any questions about your current situation, I get that as it gets later in the year, there are a lot less options at your disposal. So let me know your situation, and I'll do my best to provide my insight and what I think. But at the end of the day, trust your gut and just use this video as one more information piece to make your decision.